Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. We're going to hear from a hiker in West Virginia who saw something. But before we get to the stories, let me be the first to say welcome aboard if you like the content but haven't signed up. Let's move on to the stories now. Work keeps me so busy all the time. I've always been curious about supernatural things. And I've had a similar experience. My experience isn't like many of the ones I read or hear about online. Before anyone says anything, it's not that it's too crazy or anything, it's just that I have real proof, which you can see in the pictures I've attached to this email. Please keep in mind. This is a zoomed-in picture taken in the woods of West Virginia with an iPhone 6. Anyway, my meeting happened in 2017 in the West Virginia mountains. What people say about West Virginia is really true. It's crazy and great. Just a little bit about myself. I am one of the managers at the Walmart in West Virginia where I live. I don't want to say what town I'm from because I still work there and I'm sending you pictures of what I saw. I'm not sure. I just don't want it to bother people or let them find out who I am. I'm sorry if that sounds strange. So, I'd like it if you didn't tell anyone my name or email address. I grew up in West Virginia, and the Appalachians have always been my favorite place to go hiking and camping. Since I was a kid, I've been doing it. My dad would always take me and my brothers camping. It was one of the things we liked to do together the most. Now that I'm 31, I still love the hiking camp. I try to go a few times a year at least. Most of the time, I go with my friends or brothers, but sometimes I go by myself. I like to get away from everyone and just enjoy nature. My job is a lot of work. Since Walmart is always very busy. I work a lot, so when I go camping by myself, I sometimes just need to take a break. It has been so nice. I don't mind being alone or having time to think. I do, in fact, talk to myself a lot. I know that sounds weird, but let's just say I'm fine on my own. In fact, one of my favorite shows is on the History Channel. It's called Alone. I began to learn about bushcraft. Having seen that show, I've been going to the same place since I was a kid. In the Appalachian Mountains, that's about an hour's walk from the nearest road. It's in a very remote part of the state, and I've never seen anyone else there. It's one of my favorite places in the world. In August 2017, I was planning a 2-night trip by myself to my favorite place. Just in case I wanted to stay longer, I brought enough food for 3 or 4 days. On Friday, I hiked in and set up my camp. I spent the rest of the day relaxing and getting to know the area. I didn't notice or hear anything strange. I wasn't looking for anything, but I have to tell you because you'll see why in a minute. I went to bed early that night because I wanted to get up early the next day. I wanted to go hiking, but I was too tired because I had worked for half a day and then hiked all the way out to my favorite spot. That evening, in the middle of the night, I was woken up by a loud noise that sounded like something was running through the woods. I stood up in my tent to listen, but I didn't hear anything else. I thought it must have been an animal, so I went back to sleep. I've seen a few black bears while camping here, which is kind of scary, but they usually run away when you make noise. I also always have bear spray and my 357 with me. A few hours later, the same noise woke me up again. This time, it seemed like something was in the trees from the sound. Something was going on up above me. I got my flashlight and went outside to see what was going on. At first, I didn't see anything, so I shone the light up into the trees. Then I saw a big black-winged creature with big red eyes just sitting in a tree. This thing was covered in black fur and feathers and had to be about 5 feet tall. It had skinny legs and wings that were almost as big as the rest of its body. Now, I've been coming to these woods since I was a little boy, and I've never seen anything like this. I can tell you it wasn't a bird, and it scared the hell out of me, to put it mildly. I didn't say anything or make any noise. I just backed slowly into my tent and closed the zipper. I just sat there for a while, trying to figure out what I had just seen. Then I hear it leave the ground. I opened the tent back up and shined my flashlight up at the same spot, but it was gone. I was almost tempted to just pack up my things and walk away. But it was the middle of the night, and I didn't want to walk out in the dark. I just went right back to sleep. After sitting there for an hour, I was so tired that I couldn't do anything but sleep. That night, I didn't hear anything else. The next morning, I got up early and got ready for the hike I had planned for the day. As soon as I start my hike, I see the same creature land about 50 yards away in the woods. I got to within 20 feet of my tent. When this happened, I stopped and pulled out my cell phone right away. I was able to photograph this thing twice. The first was when I took out my phone and zoomed in to take this picture. It's the first file I've sent with an email. When it landed, it was facing the other way. It looked like it had grabbed something from the ground and was eating it. I moved a little and stepped on some twigs, and it turned around and looked right at me. Now, I wish I had a picture of that, but to say the least, it scared me. I wasn't sure if this thing would attack me or not. I put my hand on the arm on my side. Then it screams very loudly and sharply, like a bird of prey, turns around, and flies away. As it was flying away, I was able to take this picture, which I really like. It was probably about 20 feet in the air when it took off. When I took that picture, it flew out of the small hole you can see in the trees in the background. So far, I've seen this thing twice and didn't want to touch it. This thing might have rabies or other diseases. I spent the next hour getting my camp ready to leave, and then I started hiking away. I didn't want to end my camping trip early because I need that time to relax and enjoy nature. But I'm not going to stay at my campsite as long as that thing is there. Since I found a few other places to camp, I haven't been back to that area, and I haven't gone camping alone again either. Over the years, I've only camped with my friends and brothers. I've only shown these pictures to a few of my closest friends and my brothers. The Mothman is the subject of a story. I know you've talked about it on your channel before. I can say for sure that it is true. There is no other way to explain what I saw that day in the woods. What other animal is 5 feet tall, has big red eyes, and wings? Thanks for telling people about me. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below. I have to say that it's the most convincing encounter I've had so far, and I've always said that if I get pictures, I'll show them to everyone. My good friend Josh from What Lurks Beneath is telling the next story. The link to his channel is below. First of all, I'm a Christian, and things like skinwalkers and people who can change their appearance remind me of what the Bible calls demons. All I ever knew about demons was what I saw in movies. I saw the movie The Exorcist and thought, I don't think that kind of thing happens today. Well, that all changed when I met a skinwalker in the Val Kilmer movie Thunderheart, which is where I first heard the term. The people who live there call them Ye Need Lu Shi, which means with it. He gets down on his knees. The Navajo wish you beautiful walking. Native American legends tell of shape-shifting, man-eating monsters called Sioux, which are real and mean big elder brother in their own language. During the summer of 1995, this happened. I led a group of young people from Boulder, Colorado, on a 2-week mission trip to the Lakota Pine Ridge Reservation to work at the mission there. What an adventure it ended up being. The native people who live close to the mission used the well every day. The main gate to the mission would be locked at night, and no one was allowed in. So, they would come early every morning and wait in line outside the main gate until it was unlocked so they could bathe and fill water containers. It seems that their homes did not have running water. We were told that some of the natives had taken the plumbing pipes out of their homes and sold them for money. During our first week at the missions, nothing really big happened. We went to different schools and held vacation Bible schools there. Some of the young people signed up to give out candy at the local hospital. Others helped fix things that needed fixing at the mission. During this week, I became friends with one of the tribe's elders who was also a Christian. We seemed to get along well, and he liked that I had read a book about Chief Sitting Bull's life as well as Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. I told him I was horrified that the army had killed so many innocent, native people. I even took a youth group to the site of the Wounded Knee massacre and prayed for our country to change. Because of this, an elder asked me if I wanted to see the Braves' sacred pole dance initiation, which no white person had ever been allowed to see. I said yes to this right away. And on the day of the dance, we drove his old station wagon to the place where everyone was meeting. Just before we got there, he told me to hide in the back of the car under some blankets and stay there. When we got there, there were about 50 cars parked in a small area. He parked in the back of the parking lot at an angle that let me see the pole in a small space between the other cars. It looked like there were more than 100 people there. He got out of the car and told me to stay low and out of sight. I could see out the side window of the station wagon, and the blankets kept me from being seen. I watched for what seemed like an hour or so from the back of the car. I watched the Braves do the run the pole dance. Some people had an animal bone tied to rawhide thongs and put through their chests. The thongs were tied to the center pole. They started to move backwards from the pole so they could pull the bone out of their own chests. I could hear the whistling, and the sounds of chants. The Braves were making a noise. Under the blankets, it got pretty hot, and I had to lift them up from time to time to let air in. Then I saw the older man running toward the car. The way he looked told me something was wrong. He quickly got in the car, yelled at me to stay still while he started the car, and told me we had to leave quickly. It was dangerous. Someone had seen me and told everyone else about it. If I broke this sacred rite, they might beat me up or even kill me if they caught me. I thought he had put his foot down because I could see clouds of dust flying behind us as we left the area. He even went faster. Once we were back on the blacktop road, we drove quickly back to the mission. A few nights after the ceremony, a sound outside the bunkhouse woke me up. I got up to see what was going on, and when I looked out the window, I saw a man standing there. He didn't have any clothes on, and his skin was as dark as coal. His eyes were bright red, and his teeth were sharp. I ran to wake the missionary up because I didn't want to scare the kids. When I told him what I had seen, he said I had described what the natives call a skinwalker, which is similar to Navajo but more specifically a bad shapeshifter. After this happened, things started to get strange. The bunkhouse at the mission was where our group stayed. Every night, we would have a bonfire, roast marshmallows, and sing worship songs. On this night in particular, about 15 of us were sitting around the fire when we all heard what sounded like a woman screaming. It seemed to come from the area outside the mission compound. We all turned around and looked at each other. Then someone said it was just the wind, but we kept hearing it, and it sounded like it was coming from the direction of the old cemetery. Now, the cemetery is only about 100 yards from the bunkhouse, but there is only one way in and one way out of the compound. As we got close to the cemetery, we all got our flashlights and decided to go check it out. The screaming just got louder and louder, and it sounded like someone was being hurt. We couldn't see anything when we shined our flashlights in that direction. As we got closer to the cemetery's entrance, the screams stopped. We all just stood there for a few seconds because we didn't know what to do. Then we heard something from the other side of the cemetery running towards us. We all turned around and ran as fast as we could back to the mission compound. When we got back to the missionaries, we told them what had happened. They said we were probably just hearing things because it was late at night. But it happened again and again the next night, and the night after that. One of the missionaries said we needed to check it out. So he gets a flashlight and a Bible and walks to the cemetery. When we heard him screaming, he had been gone for about 10 minutes. When we got to the cemetery, the missionary was lying on the ground just outside the entrance. He was shaking and sweating, and his eyes were wide open. We asked him what happened, and he said that he saw something in the cemetery that he couldn't explain. He said it was a man, but it was different from any other man he had ever seen. When he told us about it, he said the man was naked and had skin as dark as coal. He also said the man's eyes were red and that his teeth were sharp like a shark's. The missionary said that the man started to chase him out of the cemetery, and he thought he saw it change into a wolf man. He was afraid it would catch him and tear him apart. But as soon as he got out of the cemetery, he turned around to see if it was still following him, and that's when it disappeared or vanished into thin air. Then he tripped and fell, which is where we found him. We prayed and tried to figure out what had happened all night long. We go to the cemetery the next day to see if there are any signs of what the missionary saw. There were footprints on the soft ground, but they were different from any footprints we had ever seen. They reminded me more of animal prints. Strange handprints were also on the ground and on the tombstones. We didn't know what to think, but I was sure that what the missionary and I had seen was real and bad. After what happened, we all started to pay more attention to our surroundings and notice that strange things were happening on the res. We would see people walking through the woods, but when we got too close, they would vanish. At night, we would hear strange noises and see lights far away that moved and changed shape. We began feeling like we were being watched and we would feel scared. Now, we went to town a few days later to get some supplies. When we got back, the missionary told us that he had talked to some elders, who told him that a shapeshifter had been seen on the reservation. Long story short, we all got scared and left early because we didn't want to stay any longer. If we had stayed longer, I don't know what we would have done. I don't know what would have happened or what we would have seen. I will always remember that summer and what I saw on the Lakota reservation. What I saw was real, and I know it was something bad. I hope I never have to see something like that again.